afternoon, everyone, fellow competitors, the audience, and the judges. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate everyone for making it this far, including you, the audience, for sitting through numerous speeches. Don't worry, it's almost over. For now, I'd like to introduce to you our engaging speaker, Tamoy Cameron, from King Edward VI Handsworth School for Girls. That was a mouthful. She will be exploring the topic that students in the UK should be taught financial literacy as part of the curriculum. After talking to Tamoy, I can tell you that her knowledge on this subject will make for a compelling speech, as her father also recently completed his economic degree. I would also like to introduce our questioner, B, who will offer new perspectives to enhance the speech further. A friendly reminder, you have 5 minutes to speak, and I will knock on the table when there is 30 seconds left. Best of luck.
£761,991 and 5 pence. And no, not the cost of a 5-bedroom family home or even a luxury yacht. That was the cost of financial illiteracy. Enter Katie Price, a British model who made headlines for enduring the jungle and I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And if I was a celebrity, I would want you to get me out of there too. But in 2024, the media exploded when news of her second bankruptcy was declared. How did this occur? Well, remember that £761,991 and 5 pence? That was the amount of unpaid tax that Katie Price owed. Her solicitor explained that she didn't fully understand the bankruptcy process. And how can you avoid what you don't understand? Only if she had one pivotal category of knowledge, financial knowledge. Time for a quick pop quiz. I know, I'm sorry for reminding you all of school during your half-term break, but raise your hand if you can recall a Macbeth quote verbatim. Now, keep your hand raised if you know the current Bank of England base rate. See, that's the issue. Financial skills like budgeting and saving aren't prioritized in our nationwide, all-rounded curriculum, despite money being the unavoidable core of our society. If Katie Price had been taught how to manage her income or why taxes matter, maybe her peripeteia could have been avoided. This isn't just about one celebrity. It raises important questions. What are the real-world consequences of low financial literacy? What could we gain by prioritizing it? And how can we make space for it in our schools? Let's go back to the lands filled by face masks, 2-meter divides, and lining up at 3 a.m. for a roll of toilet paper. That's right, it's 2020. And though the pandemic sparked the renegade and clapping for key workers, it also ignited major economic issues like mass job displacement and inflation. According to a 2024 Financial Conduct Authority survey, over 14.6 million people in the UK report they're unable to cope with the cost of living crisis. Maybe if we were taught how to plan for financial turbulence, people would feel more equipped to deal with such crises. It's also important to note that one small mistake can adversely impact your credit score for years, affecting your ability to rent or borrow money in the future. And it's not always your fault. Without proper knowledge, people can fall victim to predatory lenders and sky-high interest rates. Post-18, we are being thrown into the financial world blindfolded and then blamed when we stumble. Now, I could talk relentlessly and about further consequences of low financial literacy, but what if? What if we lived in a utopia where every individual was taught about finance from a young age, resulting in generations of confident, financially literate UK citizens? Financial jargon such as tax, equity, and dividends wouldn't seem scary. They'd be second nature, and people wouldn't just hope they're making good decisions, they'd know they were. Even retirement would be less of a looming burden. More young people would understand the ins and outs of pensions and the importance of long-term saving, possibly resulting in a decreased reliance on welfare programs down the line. Consequently, easing the pressure on both them and the UK economy. Now, some of you may worry that the national curriculum is already packed with subject matter, but there is a way to fit finance in. Surprisingly, financial literacy is already meant to be there for secondary school pupils, taught through citizenship and maths lessons. Yet, in a 2023 survey by Compare the Market, 61% of young adults aged 18 to 25 say they don't remember learning it at all. That's why we need an urgent reform. The solution? It'll be mandatory for schools to use PSHC lessons or drop-down days to teach at least 3 hours of financial literacy per term. From reception, students will learn the basics like money doesn't grow on trees, which single-handedly was the worst news I ever heard. But As we progress, so would our financial education, covering credits, budgeting, investments, and more, because if we can memorize terms like hubris and hamartia, we can absolutely understand high interest debt. By 18, we'd be financially literate citizens, ready to budget for uni, apply for credit cards, and recognize when the YouTuber is trying to sell us another cryptocurrency scam. Shout out to Logan Paul. But members of the audience, we have gone on quite the journey today, from Katie Price's tax troubles stemming from low financial literacy, to how it can be implemented into the national curriculum, spreading financial knowledge to all. So, students and adults alike, as you leave here today, remember that it is essential that we grant the future generations the tools to navigate the financial labyrinth that awaits them, because money is a maze that we must be taught how to traverse. Thank you.
Thank you for that compelling speech. It's so important for young minds like us to know about financial literacy so that we can progress in the future. Now, I would like to invite Bea to explore the topic further.
So first, I would just like to say how shocking I find it, the severity of this situation. I certainly didn't think it was as severe as your speech has shown it to be. And I would first like to ask, why do you think, as mentioned in your speech, that money is the core of society? Why isn't it something else? Do you think it should be the core, or should we value something else more?
I think money is definitely the core of our society. I mean, I just came back from Tesco Express with a lovely sushi roll, and that cost money. And your train tickets probably cost money, and so does your houses and your food and even your pets. They all cost money. I know that's kind of a dark example to use, but just bear with me. Everyone uses money, and that's why it's unavoidable. In fact, money, as I said, is the core of our society for that very reason. And that's why I think it's so important that we teach financial literacy in schools, because of how unavoidable it is, in fact.
So first, I would like to say, I have some worries perhaps with teaching it in schools to ensure that students don't become overwhelmed by, for example, 3 hours a week for some students might, or not 3 hours a week, 3 hours a term might seem a lot for some students, and if it's not handled carefully could create financial anxiety, particularly for students whose parents perhaps don't have a lot of money. Do you think there's a way that we could prevent this or reduce this?
I really do understand your concern, especially in a time where a lot of you are doing GCSEs right now. You probably all are aware of the immense stress that comes with doing exams at the end of a linear period. But what I would say is that why have the same academic rigor with financial literacy as we have with normal subjects? Why not have discussion-based lessons? Why not have projects and lessons where we can create a school stock system or allow students to set up their own businesses where they manage the funds for that? There are so many other ways to teach financial literacy in a calm, laid-back manner that would still give students that key knowledge that they need.
And I'd also like to ask, do you see, I don't know, in your research, have you seen a disparity in perhaps the education levels throughout the country, as there are other disparities through education? Have you seen certain areas perhaps being more affected by financial illiteracy, or do you think it's roughly equal across the country?
I think that's fair. Obviously, I'm not an expert, so I can't tell you the exact trend of financial disparity across England. But what I can tell you is that after a discussion with my friend from Girl Scouts, actually, she was telling me that in form she learned about financial literacy, and she does that about 3 times a week. I, being a year 10 student, having done 4 years of school, have never even learnt how to take out a credit card. That's something I'm going to need in about 3 years' time. And that's why I think it's so key that we teach financial literacy. And I think schools are teaching it differently. But what I would say is that we should make sure that every school has the same opportunity to teach the same content matter.
And also, I would like to ask, do you think it would be a good idea to perhaps have one course that all students go on? Because you want to give them all the same opportunity. Do you think that would be a good idea?
I would agree that we should have some form of standardized specification of things that teachers need to cover in their lessons to students. But I'd also say that we'd also need to give the schools the opportunity to teach financial literacy in their own regard, whether it's having those businesses that students set up, or having students in the school council actually, giving them the opportunity to manage the school council funds. There are so many ways around it, but I definitely think we should have a set of knowledge that we need to teach students.
And finally, I would like to ask whether you think that this system, how long do you think it will take to put it in place? For students, for example, like you who are already in year 10, do you think there should be a sped up version? so you don't become financially illiterate in the past, and many of your peers who haven't had a change or reform yet?
For that, I would say we must act now. No matter how much I'd like to go back into the past and reverse some of my very embarrassing mistakes, I would say that we can't, and we have to work with what we have now. We need to implement the scheme as soon as possible to allow the students that are growing up to learn financial literacy. Though I'd wish that we lived in a world where every student, Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X even, learned financial literacy, we can't go back in time. So why not start now? At least give these Gen A individuals the opportunity to learn financial literacy.
Thank you for those questions and those answers. Now for everybody's favourite time, I'd like to invite you, the audience, for any questions you may have. Yes, at the front here.
You spoke just at the end there about putting this in place for the future because we can't really go back in time. But do you think it would be possible to put something in place which would help people who have already gone through the school system to learn financial literacy late, as you would say?
I think that's a fair point on doing things for people who have left the school system already. But as I said before, I'm not an expert, so I can't tell you the list of ways you can teach financial literacy post-18. Maybe there's some workshops, maybe there's online courses that people can do, but again, not too knowledgeable on the subject because I haven't been taught it. But what I can say is that we at least need to teach it in schools to give the students we have now the best opportunity possible.
Yes.
Do you think that students should be tested on their financial knowledge to encourage them to take these lessons seriously like they do other lessons like maths and English?
I think that's a fair point, but I would like to step away from the academic rigor of normal subjects. I mean, I'm not a fan of tests myself. I think any teacher of mine would agree. But I would say to that, I think having these discussion-based lessons where we clearly show students that link between the stuff they're learning in lessons and how it can be applied in real life, for example. I'm learning about how student loans work, but how will this actually affect me in real life? Well, when you go to university in a couple of years. And that's sort of the example I want to say to you all today, that we can, in fact, teach students financial literacy in a way that's not stressful, that's not anxiety-inducing, but is still effective and still gives them that vital knowledge that we all need.
Thank you. I think that's all that we have time for today. Thank you for those questions and for your answers again. And I'd like to congratulate you on your perspicacity today. It is so important for students like us to know this financial literacy for the future. It is our future, of course. Personally, what I found particularly interesting was the examples of celebrities that have gone bankrupt, such as Katie Price, and just how many people can have this consequence of financial illiteracy. Thank you for also reminding us of our exams and the fact that I need to revise compound interest for my maths paper too. And you then touched on a world where we do have financial literacy and how it would be second nature. Everyone would know about pensions and student loans. Wouldn't we all like that? And finally, she talked about how we could implement this into our schools using PSHE lessons, or the fact that it should already be in lessons like citizenship and maths. B then asked some questions about the importance of money, and it highlights just how much we should know about financial literacy. You talked about certain areas that there might be a disparity between certain areas, and whether we should have one course for all students to make it equal. Now, as we come to a close, I'd like to thank Tamoy for her thoughtful speech, B for her insightful questions, the ESU and the judges for providing this amazing experience, which was also somehow more nerve-wracking than my English exam, as you can just tell. And you, the audience, for your listening and active participation in this presentation. Have a good afternoon.